Hi everyone, welcome to Miss Adams Teaches Poetry. In this video we're going to be taking a look at the Destruction of Sennacherib by Lord Byron as part of the Edexcel conflict collection, but you may well be studying it with a different exam board. Either way, it's all relevant. This video is going to focus on the content of the poem, the story as in, but also some interesting context and key ideas about form. There is another video coming your way that will be analysing 5 key moments, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. But for now, let's get revising.
Okay, so this poem tells the story of the siege of Jerusalem by the hands of the king Sennacherib, who was the Assyrian king, an event in history that took place 710 BC, but then is retold in the Bible. And it stays closer to the story of the Bible because it is about the way that when this army came down to attack Jerusalem, despite their power and despite their splendor, they're all killed overnight because God steps in, or the angel of death steps in. So the poem starts off by describing the army and its power, and then it moves on to the kind of mystery of their death and the intervention of the angel of death and God. It describes the horses, it describes the riders, and then it describes the families and the widowers of the army that are left behind. So it's a story about destruction, but also God's power, like God's triumph. Okay, contextually, quite a few different things to talk about here. So the poem was written by Lord Byron, who was kicking around from 1788 to 1824, and he wrote this poem in 1815 in a collection of work called the Hebrew Melodies. Now, Lord Byron was a romantic poet, an incredibly famous romantic poet, not just because of the quality of his poems, but because he cut a rather controversial figure. You could certainly describe him as a nonconformist, and even this poem itself is a reflection of that, because the time he was writing was highly anti-Semitic, and this poem is very, it's sort of, and in fact the entire collection of poems is sort of celebrating Jewish nationalism. It's much more sympathetic towards the Jewish rather than the Assyrian king. But he was also controversial for other reasons, largely to do with his recreational behaviours and his romantic life. He had lots of affairs, including with his half-sister. Got up to all sorts of naughtiness. He was good friends with poets like Percy Shelley. He knew Mary Shelley as well. So yeah, have a little Google of Lord Byron and you'll find out all about it. So as I said in the previous slide, this is, although it is from history, 710 BC, what he's using is the story in the Bible for his narrative poem, and this is the story that comes from Kings 2, chapter 19. There's another version of it in Isaiah as well, I believe, which tells the story of, like I said, the Assyrian king coming down on Jerusalem and then God wiping them out. Now, in history, people don't know why they died, and there are some versions of the story that actually say that they were victorious. So who knows? But in this poem, the Assyrians are wiped out by God. Okay, so let's talk about form. Quite a nice one to write on for form, actually. First of all, it's a narrative poem, basically a poem that tells a story, which you can clearly see. It's set out in quatrains, so you've got 6 quatrains. There's a lot of regularity in this poem. Now, all the way through, we have rhyming couplets. So all of the quatrains are made up of a set of 2 rhyming couplets. So you can call them rhyming couplets, or you can say an AAPP rhyme scheme. And the rhythm is largely anapestic. Okay, now what I mean by that, normally we talk about, you probably will have heard phrases like iambic pentameter and such, and all of those have like 2 feet, and it's all about where the stresses are in the syllables. Now, anapestic rhythms have 3, so it goes du-du-dum, 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 you know, like the leaves of the forest when summer is, do you see what I mean? It's like, And there lay the rider, distorted and pale, with the dew on his brow and the rust on his mail. Do you see how it's all done in threes? Da-da-dum, da-da-dum. Every now and then there's a deviation, so you get the odd I am. So for example, and there lay the steed. Do you see how the rhythm is slightly different there? And in terms of why he's doing this, there's a kind of sense of speed and momentum and pace building up, not just because of the rhyming couplets, but because of that anapestic rhythm, da-da-dum, da-da-dum. And some people say that it actually represents the sound and the motion of the galloping horses. And obviously the I-ams that happen every now and then sort of like break up ever so slightly, almost like a little horse stumbling, you could say. Or it might be done to put specific emphasis on a word. So for example, in the fourth stanza, there is an I am at the beginning, and there lay the steed with the nostril all wide. So do you see what I mean? It puts focus on and there, like it's pointing to it. But generally, you can say here the anapestic rhythm, the rhyming couplets, and also when you get into the structure of the poem as well, all of the anaphora, so all of the repeated ands at the beginning of the lines, you can sort of see them here and see them here. All of it builds up momentum and pace, potentially reflecting the movement of the armies as they fly on down to Jerusalem. That's it from me, just a quickie. Thank you very much for watching. There is another video coming your way with 5 key quotes explained and analysed in full, so keep your eyes peeled for that one. If you're finding these useful, do subscribe and please do share around with your buddies because we're all in it together. Thank you again and happy revising.